Do you know what has the fiercest leadership energy on the planet? A little bird that weighs less than a paperclip. Yep, today we're going to talk about hummingbirds. Tiny wings, but big leadership lessons. From focused action to fierce boundaries, this little powerhouse just might change the way that you lead. Let's spark something new, starting right now. Today, I want to talk about something totally unexpected, but completely fitting. Hummingbirds. Yep, the tiniest little birds with the fiercest energy. This morning, I was out on my front porch. I had my chai latte in one hand and my notebook in the other hand, classic multitasker move, when one of my hummingbirds zipped right past me. It hovered over by the flowers that I've got planted, then darted off, came back, hovered over in front of me. I just stood there watching it because these little machines of a bird are crazy. They're so small and yet so powerful. And that's when it hit me. This bird is a living masterclass in leadership. So today we're going to break down 5 surprising hummingbird facts and the leadership sparks that we can pull from them. Okay, let's dive in. The first fact, hummingbirds can flap their wings up to 80 times a second. It's not about their size. It's about focusing their energy and making small, consistent actions that lead to big momentum. If you're like me, when you hear 80 times a second, it sounds exhausting, right? Even just saying that, if you could see me, I'm sticking my arms out and I'm flapping them. I don't think that I could probably do 20 in a second. For a hummingbird, it's not wasted motion, it's purposeful. That consistent flutter allows them to hover with incredible precision. When their wings are moving that fast, you can't even focus in on their wings. It's consistent and non-stop. This reminds me of a time very early in my career. I honestly didn't have any chunks of time to build a network. I had 4 boys, a very full calendar at work, a house that I felt like always looked like a tornado had swept through. But I knew it was really important, so I had to make a decision. For me, that decision was just 30 minutes a day, no matter what. If it's one email, one phone call, one pass by the water cooler conversation, whatever it was, 30 minutes a day was going to be dedicated to building a tribe of people around me. I knew the long-term importance of building connections with people outweighed the busyness of my schedule. At the time, I knew 30 minutes wasn't very much. It didn't feel like it anyway. But over time, all of those minutes compounded into building lifelong relationships of trust. People who helped me transform, not just in my career, but in me personally. Just like the hummingbird, we need to figure out what those goals are and then make sure that we have that consistent flutter of activity that's going to help propel us forward. So what's one small, focused action that you can take every day that's going to move you forward towards your goals? Because remember, it's about focused energy and consistent actions. All right, the second amazing thing, and probably my favorite, is that hummingbirds can fly backwards. They can actually go sideways too, but we're going to focus on how they can go backwards. So what does this tell us about leadership? Great leaders reflect. Sometimes stepping back gives you a better launch forward. Hummingbirds are the only birds that can move backwards with control. And honestly, how often do we give ourselves permission to do that? We live in a world that is constantly moving, constantly connected. We don't often pause and give ourselves that dedicated time to look backwards. Years ago, I took on a new big role. It came with a big title, big responsibility, and all the things that look great on paper. But from the moment I started in that role, I knew that something felt off. I was constantly trying to prove myself instead of leading from my strengths. Every single day seemed to be a struggle. I loved the people and I loved the idea of the role that I was in. So I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. I kept trying to push forward, though, do the same things that I had done in previous roles that made me successful, take the same actions, and yet it wasn't working. I was still frustrated, going home completely empty and exhausted. It wasn't until I really paused and looked backward I was able to reflect and realize that I needed to make a tough decision. And that decision was simply to leave the company and realign. Now, some people would look at this like a failure, but here's what I'm going to tell you. It wasn't a failure. It was simply a recentering of myself, of my goals, my values, and making sure my next role was going to be in something that I could use my strengths every single day. That one backward move, it led me to create the life and work that I actually wanted. I didn't lose momentum, I found clarity. For you, this could be taking a role that's a lateral move or a step backwards so that you can learn about a new department or you can learn a new skill set that's going to propel you forward in your career. It could be simply pausing to look backwards on a project or a task to say, hey, what did we do great? What could we have done better? How do we want to change it for next time? We have lots of opportunities to look backward, even in our own personal reflection. We all have goals, but we don't take the time on an annual, a quarterly, or even a monthly schedule to look backwards to see, are we on track towards those goals or have we deviated in some way and need to do something different? So here's my spark challenge to you on this fact. What's something in your life or your leadership that you need to take a strategic step backward? Where do you simply need to pause and reflect? Identify the things that you've learned so that you can figure out how to propel yourself forward. The third fact from these hummingbirds is that they visit 1,000 to 2,000 flowers every single day. Our leadership lesson? Stay curious. Innovation comes from gathering, not just from grinding. Hummingbirds don't stick to one flower. They explore, they sample a little, they move on, they check out different colors, different pots. It's a beautiful rhythm of discovery every single day. In my world, when I'm creating coaching and speaking content, there's many times that I'll hit that creative wall and not be able to move forward, or where everything simply falls flat. So I have to step away from my usual inputs and start listening to podcasts completely outside of my field. A few weeks ago, as a matter of fact, I listened to a podcast on architecture, one on neuroscience, and even a stand-up comedian. I was struggling in getting the final touches on this keynote together and at a complete stop. But when I listened to things that were outside of my norm, guess what happened? That fresh perspective, it lit me up. I came back to my work with new metaphors, new language, new ideas, all because I simply flew to a different flower. I stayed curious and tried something new. Innovation, positive change, and growth all come from being curious. Bringing new people in to share their unique experiences, asking tons of great questions, and being willing to experiment. So how can you stay curious and learn new perspectives, new ideas? What things outside of your norm could you do that could reignite your creativity or give you a different view on something that you're working on? The fourth fact about a hummingbird, they enter a deep rest state called torpor at night. This is a great reminder that in leadership, rest isn't a reward, it's actually a requirement. Your recovery is going to power your results. Despite their all-day energy, hummingbirds shut completely down at night. No motion whatsoever. Those little wings are staying still. No productivity. They're just resting. It's a non-negotiable for their bodies. And to be honest, this one hits home for me. I think it's a family curse. I simply do not sleep well. My mind doesn't shut off enough for me to rest easily. When I lay down at night, it automatically starts thinking about the 100 things I didn't get done or the 100 things that I need to do. And even when I do fall asleep, I wake up after just a few hours. What I learned, though, is that rest doesn't always equal nighttime sleep. Rest comes in many forms. It's not just that solid 8 hours or a nap. It's giving our bodies permission to stop pushing forward. As I said, this is a tough one for me. I'm not good at slowing down. And actually, one day right after work, I had picked up my son to take him to soccer, completely exhausted. I hadn't slept well the night before. I just worked all day. I probably had 10 to 12 meetings back to back on my calendar. And my plan was take him to soccer, and then I was going to walk around the soccer fields, get my exercise in while I'm reading my notes on my phone for a meeting at work the next day. But here's what happened. My brain couldn't take it. I was mentally exhausted, and I just needed to rest. So I did. I sat down on a bench, and I watched these ducks playing on the pond while my son was practicing soccer for the next 90 minutes. And you know what happened? That rest allowed my ideas to start flowing. My energy returned, and I felt as if I had a renewed outlook on going into the next day. That one rest taught me more than any productivity book probably ever has. It told me that rest can be in multiple forms. And we know this. It can be meditation, it could be reading, or like I was doing, it could be staring into the abyss and trying to shut your brain off. Other countries practice this regularly. They put pauses in the middle of their days for naps, making it a national priority. It's a lesson that I knew was always out there, but I had never personally put it into practice. I now know that resting allows us to do a full reset, or kind of like my tech support people say, it's going to give you a reboot. You need to just rest. Rest is unique to each person. For some people, it's a few minutes. For some people, it's a couple hours. And it comes in so many different forms now that you have the opportunity to try a whole bunch of them and see which one has the best positive impact for you. So, what does your torpor look like? And how can you honor it before your system actually forces it to? We know that rest keeps us healthy, both physically and mentally. The last fact that I want to talk about these hummingbirds are that they are fiercely territorial. In leadership, we know that boundaries can be brave to put in place. We have to guard our energy like it is that favorite flower. These little dynamo hummingbirds are not pushovers. If you invade their space, they're going to let you know. And I respect that. I don't particularly like it when they come bombarding at me. I once had a season in my life where I said yes to everything. And this is something that we as women do quite often. We say yes to every event, every friend that calls in need, every opportunity that's out there. That's exactly what I was doing. But when I showed up, I was often exhausted, sometimes resentful. I carried some guilt from missing out on other things with my family that I should have been doing. Those are all signs that our boundaries are paper thin and not solid. At the time, I was a vice president at work. I was a founding partner of a nonprofit organization, which on its own could have been a full-time role. Our family was extremely busy in the community and at school, and yet I kept pushing myself to try and be this Wonder Woman to do it all. I carried it like it was a badge of honor, to be honest. I even carried around a Wonder Woman cup. Then one day, I opened up my calendar and I kind of had a meltdown. My older kids were growing up fast, and I only had a few more years with them in the house. I didn't want to miss any of it. My little guy was doing all kinds of new fun things, and they're my priority. So I had to start small. It started out with just protecting one afternoon a week to do something special with them. Then I transitioned it to work, where I started blocking off space for deep work. Then I figured out how to say no to a request that didn't align with my priorities. And guess what? My world didn't collapse. I was able to pull through. In fact, in doing that, it gave me more energy to do more of it. And it actually let me make a bigger impact in the things that I was doing. Now, we are going to have an entire episode on creating your boundaries because it's one of the steps in creating a spark life. When we can establish those non-negotiables, it allows you to say yes to what fuels you and those things that align with your top priorities. And then when you say no, you're able to do it guilt-free. It gives us the power to say no to all of those things that drain us. But for today, like that hummingbird, what territory do you need to protect? Where do you need to build a stronger fence and make sure that those non-negotiables are standing up? So there you have it. Some questions to ponder about the leadership secrets from our hummingbirds. Focused action, strategic reflection, relentless curiosity, intentional rest, and fierce boundaries. It's amazing how something so small can lead with such power. And maybe, just maybe, that's our reminder too. You don't need to do it all. You just need to do the right things with spark. Okay, pick one of the 5 sparks. Decide how you're going to live it out this week and tag me in social media so that I can cheer you on. Until next time, be bold, be bright, and always lead with spark.